From the spicy laksa to the immersive hot pot, Singapore's soups are more than just meals. They are cultural experiences. So Renjie and I are going to uncover the heart and soul behind these beloved bowls today.
So RJ, the last time I was in Singapore was a couple of months ago. I was traveling to Phuket, but decided to go via Singapore, extend my layover.
Nice.
And have one meal in Singapore.
Yeah.
So I get out of Changi Airport, go to Jewel, which is the now famous shopping center of Singapore, a sightseeing attraction in itself. And I go have a dish which was at a place called Sauerkraut, which was a fish soup or a pickled fish soup.
Yeah.
So, do you think if anyone wanted to do just soups in Singapore, they would have enough? And if yes, which I know the answer to it is a yes.
Yes, of course.
What are some of the soups of Singapore that you would recommend?
So, I was going to say that I may not be the most objective person to ask this question to because I am obsessed with soups. I love soups. And I think that, I guess the short answer to your question is yes, it is very possible because in Singapore, soup exists in many different forms, right? So it's not just the, hot and sour, it's not just the manchow, but it's like clear soups, it's spicy soups, it's thick soups, it's soup with noodles, it's soup with rice. So I think the parameters or like the boundaries of soup are kind of fuzzy in Singapore because it's everywhere.
And also every meal, right? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, supper.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I do love that idea of like the pickled fish, pickled vegetable fish, because it blurs the boundaries I feel between like a bowl of soup because there is a lot of broth in there. There is a whole fish in there. And so it really is one of those like, or you have slices of fish as well. So it's kind of almost like a steamed fish situation. But it also kind of blurs into the area of hot pot a little bit because you put in a bunch of stuff, and again the additional vegetables and the noodles and is kind of the point of eating this as well, right? So I love that dish.
So you mentioned the hot pot. So let's start with the hot pot, which is still a soupy dish. So what is that experience like?
So hot pot is, for those who don't know what a hot pot is a central sort of soup that bubbles away at the table as you eat. And the whole point of it is you are dipping, or throwing in ingredients to cook inside. So at any one point in time, you'll have, let's say, slices of, vegetables in there, but you'll also have a bunch of noodles in there, and you're adding whatever you want to add. It's a wonderful experience from a family point of view, and in fact, I think this was something that growing up we always had during, let's say, Chinese New Year or Christmas. There was always let's have hot pot because everybody sits around the table and is just spending hours together cooking their food, and it's a nice experience. But it's now become a very big thing in Singapore, and so it's these restaurants where, for instance, there's a condiment bar, it's a sauce bar, and you are mixing and matching. It's not just soy sauce or chili, but it's also like fried shallots. It's also coriander that you mix in. It's actually a sesame sauce, and you kind of custom make your own sauces. And of course the ingredients can get very premium if you want to. You can stick with the basic sort of noodles and whatever, but you could, for instance, get really like air-flown, let's say, pork from Japan, or you could get this specific type of wild mushroom, foraged from, whatever, the Himalayas, right? So it's a wonderful experience.
Now, that's one experience. A laksa is also a soup, right? But it has different things.
Yes.
What's your take on laksa?
So my take on laksa is that if you don't enjoy laksa, you are probably a criminal. There's something not right with you. Laksa, I think for me, the heart of it actually lies in the brothiness of laksa. And in Singapore, the kind of laksa that we have tends to be a little bit more on the brothy side than it is like a curry sauce. And it's oftentimes meant to be eaten only with a spoon. So they cut the rice noodles into sort of short segments so that you can eat it together with a spoon. And again, I think laksa is one of those things that you eat, in my mind, for breakfast as a hearty way to start the day. But again, it's also throughout the day. I'll have a laksa at any point in the day. Bonus points if it's raining outside.
Well, I would say that I'm not the biggest fan of laksa, and I don't know why that is.
What is it about it?
I think, to me, it feels more like a curry.
Yeah.
Because it has that slight Indian influence in there, right? And for me, curry in a soup, then because I've grown up having hot and sour soup, manchow soup, and a few.
It's
other
neither
things.
here nor there.
Yeah, I would say that. That's why then a Khow Suey, which is also a soup, right? Like, is something that I gravitate towards because it's less curry-y than a laksa.
So if you enjoy like again a more soupy version of like a Khow Suey, this wonderful Malay dish that you have again all across the Malay Peninsula, but in Singapore especially, is Soto.
Soto.
Soto is a class of Malay soups, and it's a very spiced soup. So you'll have turmeric, it's tinged yellow. It's usually cooked with a mixture of cumin and of coriander, but also a lot of these like lemongrassy flavors, you know. And it's usually eaten, for instance, with noodles, like glass noodles, or, you know, yellow wheat noodles, egg noodles, and bits of you know, chicken. So it's a delicious dish. Again, in this case, bonus points if it's raining outside.
So we've spoken about Soto.
Yeah.
We've spoken about laksa. We've spoken about the hot pot experience. And we've spoken about the fish, which is spiced fish soup. Now, because we are constrained for time, just name like any number of soups that come to your mind when you talk about Singapore.
Like
just go on.
list.
Yeah.
So, okay, Bak Kut Teh.
Yeah. That's pork broth soup.
That's pork broth soup, pork bone soup.
Bone.
Fish noodles.
Okay, fish
which
noodles.
is a soupy noodles that traditionally is you boil the bones of the fish until the liquid emulsifies and gets milky. So it's dairy free, but it's milky, delicious. I would also count in, for example, like a very simple herbal chicken soup, which is a very, you know, sort of Chinese.
It's good for your
traditional
sinuses.
It's good for everything. It's like the cure for cancer. It's also, I would say, like rasam. To me, any day I will take a very good tamil rasam. I would say like how much more time do I have? I could go on forever.
Okay, let's end it with a very unique dish, which people will be like, really? The Karela soup that you told me about. Yeah, what was that?
So, you know, Karela in Singapore is bigger, meatier, and
Yeah.
also far less bitter than the Karela here. I love Karela here.
Yeah.
But the ones that we have in Singapore is a lot less bitter. And you make it essentially in a soup, a clear soup, oftentimes with tofu, with like a little bit of tomato. You can put in like seafood, for instance, like slices of fish and calamari and prawns. But it's just a tinge of bitterness. You get that herbal sort of complexity from the Karela.
Yeah.
And then you eat it with rice or you eat it with noodles. And it's just the most, to me, wholesome thing, you know?
Awesome. So that was a good take on soups in Singapore. But because we started the episode with Jewel at Changi, let's end it with giving our listeners a take on what's coming next. So we're going to talk about the Jewel, why it's so famous, and I'm going to quiz you on like what one should really do in Jewel that is different from the main attractions of Jewel. So let's find that out on the next episode.
The secrets of Jewel.
Yep.